Hi everyone, this is a Breadchain crowdstaking protocol development update. And what we wanted to do is share with you guys where we are in terms of development of the front end of the application. We already have the smart contract working, but we're still working on the front end so that you can actually interact with it as a user. Of course, you can always interact with the contract through the blockchain if you know how to do it, but of course, more people don't. Most people do not know how to do that, and that's why we need a front end for it. Um, but before we get into that, maybe I can just quickly go through and remind people why we're sort of working on this crowd staking protocol. So, in case you've forgotten, Breadchain is a community of decentralized and cooperative projects, or is meant to be. So, we're really focused on trying to build the cooperative economy on the blockchain and build what we would call solidarity primitives, or based protocols that allow for people to easily show solidarity with one another. And so the project itself, we have a cooperative in the form of ownership of a multi signature wallet for the most part, which is me and a few others who are taking their time to work on it. But over time, we want to grow that out by with people who would align with our general principles, either because they already have a project and that aligns very well, or they would like to build a project that aligns very well. Um, this is something that over time we want to have an application process in order to get people to come join the Breadchain network. But so our four main principles are economic democracy, mutual aid, transparent governance, and dual power. So you can check those out there. If you go to the website at breadchain.versal.app at the moment, you can see what our principles are. It's right there on our homepage. So the main point is for us to discover how we can use DLT or blockchain type of technologies in order to facilitate a more cooperative world that we want to see, to forge solidarity with one another rather than the usual profiteering or value extraction that we see very often in the blockchain space and the decentralized finance space. But so in a project like this, there's a couple of different ways that we can think about funding. And each of these types of funding is a different type of economic expression, I think. One of course is direct giving or donations. You can do this with through the traditional financial system. You can use Open Collective, PayPal, etc. to give directly to projects. And as well, you can do that through cryptocurrencies where you can give directly to the Breadchain wallet, multi-signature wallets if you want to in order to support the project. We also have an Open Collective if you want to give there. Then we have patronage, which Open Collective also does through traditional financial payment rails. And then through cryptocurrency is not exactly possible yet. I know projects are working on it, but I haven't seen them yet being completely proven. But this is a way that you can give money in smaller amounts, but over a longer amount of time, as opposed to a one-time donation in which you would need to give a larger amounts to really make it useful. And then on the third choice is what we would call staking. This is essentially the same in the traditional finance world as investment, but this would require a type of legal incorporation in order to do traditional investing, in which maybe the gains from that investment would go directly to some sort of philanthropic cause, or maybe directly to Breadchain or some cooperative. But this is not really desirable because there's a lot of legal hurdles involved, and a lot of times you have to have a lot of money to even be able to take part in something like this. So what's really nice about the cryptocurrency world is that you don't have these types of restrictions, and so people with smaller amounts can give money as well to help fund these types of projects. So this is the whole point of the Breadchain crowd staking protocol, which is where we have a smart contract which forwards your DAI, which is a US dollar backed stablecoin, into the compound lending pool, and all of the interest that's generated from your DAI is given to the cooperative. This also gives the ability for people to what we would call rage quit and pull out their funds from the smart contract whenever they feel that they either don't support it, or maybe they just need their money back for paying for something else. So in that way, they can still provide support through the interest on compound, similar to like a savings account, but with a much higher interest rate. So let's go into some of the details of how the Breadchain crowdstaking protocol works. So this is sort of the overall architecture. At the top, we have the users, or Breadchain crowdstakers, we like to call them. And let's say you want to support the Breadchain project through this mechanism. What you would do is you would send DAI to the contract, and that contract would forward that DAI to the compound lending pool, accruing interest into that contract for the Breadchain multi-signature wallet, which is held by the cooperative members to withdraw the interest from. When you do that as a user, you also mint the Bread token. So that's here. And it's minted at a 1-to-1 collateral. So the exact amount of DAI that you give in, you will get the exact amount of bread. What you can then do as a user, if at some point later you don't, maybe you don't agree with the project anymore, if you need the money, you can burn that bread directly onto the contract and have all of the DAI that you have, an equal amount of bread, back to you so that you've never actually lost any of the DAI that you've originally given. At the same time, you can also keep holding bread to use for other types of services that accept bread, because bread is essentially equal to the same value as DAI and therefore has the same properties as DAI, and you can use it similarly. So you can kind of think of the bread token as a type of digital local currency, which is a bit strange to think about, but the locality in this sense is really the Breadchain network, or the projects that accept bread because they agree with the overall vision of the project. And so with the interest that's accrued in the crowdstaking contract and then given to the multi-signature wallets, funds can be moved to give to Breadchain projects. And so at the moment, it's sort of basically at the will of the cooperative members who are a part of the multi-signature wallet. But in the future, what we want to do is democratize this aspect to make it more interactive and for the community to be able to decide how we give money or how we portion the money to different projects, maybe through some sort of quadratic vote or something like that, conviction voting. There's a lot of different things that we can potentially think about to do that. But at the moment, since we have a limited amount of time and a limited amount of resources, we're focusing on what is the base solidarity primitive, which is basically this crowdstaking protocol. And then afterwards, we can begin thinking about how we do the governance of all of this. So that's the crowdstaking protocol. Like I mentioned before, DAI is a stable coin, so it's always equal roughly to the US dollar. But bread is always exactly equal to DAI through this smart contract. So you can always mint bread in the exact amount of DAI, and therefore bread has relatively the same value as the US dollar, because DAI also has relatively the same value of the US dollar. There's very, very small fluctuations usually. It doesn't get very high, and it is much more resilient than other popular stable coins that are out there. So that's why we chosen DAI. Another thing that I think is very interesting about how we've set this up is that we've sort of acknowledged that secondary markets are going to exist, because it's something that it's difficult to avoid in the cryptocurrency space. But what that means is that we can prepare for this, and we can actually set up systems to where the cooperative or the Breadchain network itself is always able to use arbitrage on secondary markets to benefit the collective. So let's say, for example, bread price is higher than the DAI price. We can always sell that bread for more DAI in order to mint more bread through the smart contract, since there's always going to be 1-to-1 through the smart contract. And then vice versa, if bread price is lower than DAI, we can always buy cheap bread to keep for the cooperative itself if we want to save it for the case of the other situation. Or if we want, we can just burn the equivalent amount of bread to profit on the difference. So no matter which direction the secondary markets are at, it's always possible for the Breadchain cooperative to use that arbitrage to benefit the collective. But all right, let's look at what the state of the demo is at the moment. So if I just close this and go here, this is sort of the very, very basic version of what we want to accomplish with the Breadchain cooperative. We want to make it look very, very easy and simple for users to know what direction they're going in, I should say. So are we going from Dai to bread, so we're minting bread, or are we going from bread to Dai, so we're burning bread in order to get our Dai back? So in order to do that, we have this very clear from and to that are listed above what the actual token is, and then we can press this button to move back and forth between the two. So that way, as a user, I always know in which direction I'm going. And once I've decided which direction I want to go, then I would click transfer. At the moment, unfortunately, gas prices are quite high on the Ethereum network, so I'm not going to do this right now. This is on the mainnet, so if you find the contract address, then you can see that we've accumulated a little bit of money from Compound. But this is sort of a problem that we have to consider. And so how we're planning to go around that potentially, we're thinking, is to use the XDAI network. So XDAI is a side chain of Ethereum with much, much, much lower transaction fees, talking about pennies. And so what the cooperative can do is mint a large amount of bread, provide liquidity on a decentralized exchange on XDAI. And in that way, you as a user can much more cheaply buy some bread from from the decentralized exchange to avoid that. The hope, of course, in the future is that Ethereum will be able to get over these type of high transaction fees. Time will tell whether that will happen. At the very least, we have these side chains that we can use. And of course, there are these other layer 2 solutions. But XDAI is one of the ones that we're considering at the moment in order to avoid these type of transaction fees. So that's the demo at the moment. What we want to do, of course, is make it a bit prettier, add some more information for people to know exactly what they're doing and to know what they're supporting even, and add this to the main website for Breadchain. That's something that will take time, and it's something that we need help with. So if you are a Web3 developer, then please reach out. Or if you're interested in learning Web3, definitely reach out and let us know if you would like to help. Or even if you're just like a front-end developer, we could also use your help. And so if you go back, if you're not a developer or if you don't have time to help out, of course, you can always give through our open collective. So Platform 6 has been really nice to us and is our fiscal host on Open Collective. And so you can give either as a donation or patronage directly to our Open Collective, and we will use that money to help fund further development of Breadchain. And then lastly, if you want to keep up, you can, of course, check out our newsletter. So if you go to breadchain.mailchimpsites.com, you can sign up for the newsletter, in which we'll send updates on the progress of the project. You can follow us on Twitter. You can go directly to the website at breadchain.versal.app. If you go to the blog, there is a much more detailed version of how the crowdstaking protocol works, so feel free to check it out there. Or if you would like to help out, either because you're a developer or you're thinking about maybe it would be a good idea to partner up on something with this, then you can contact us at breadchaincoop@gmail.com. So there it is. Thanks a lot.